altitude between 50 and 60,000 feet, and we're out of the jet streams, which are the high-level winds, and we're above any cloud formations. There's been nil turbulence. It's been a very, very comfortable and enjoyable flight for everybody.
Speaker 2, Roger, we noted your 3-minute late departure from John F. Kennedy Airport. Do you envisage still be on time to join us in London on schedule?
That's affirmative. We're estimating Occam now at 1448.
Roger, and what kind of send-off did you receive from air traffic control at Kennedy in New York?
Generally, it was a magnificent send-off from everybody at John F. Kennedy. The airways were jammed, I tell you. It's also a very, very sad day for our staff there, who won't be seeing this magnificent airplane again. When we departed Kennedy, there must have been about 100 vehicles in the sort of semi-darkness, early dawn there, and fire trucks were in attendance spraying red, white and blue sprays just before us there, with the flags of the United States and the United Kingdom out of both windows. So it really was a sight to behold. The airfield practically came to halt. Everybody wanted to wait to see us off, and there were 6 helicopters actually photographing us as we departed the airfield at Kennedy.
Speedbird 2, Roger. We'll call you back in about 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes, Speedbird Concorde 2.
Adrian, thanks very much. Well, there you have it from the horse's mouth, as it were, that JFK Concorde making good progress. It's now flying at about 37,000 feet, so if you are on the flight path, you should be able to look up, cloud permitting, and see the contrails as it flies west to east, and of course get a much better view over London. The 3 Concordes are going to land on the northern runway behind me, one after the other, and then they're all going to line up, drop their noses, and all of the pilots are going to poke a Union flag out. So it'll be quite a significant moment there. John.
Fergus, thank you very much indeed. And was it my imagination, or did I just detect a flicker of emotion in the voice of the first officer there on board Concorde as they're coming in over Devon now? Well, he was talking about what it was like to leave New York early this morning. We can cross live now to JFK Airport, and our correspondent Stephen Evans, who saw the Concorde 002 off. Steve, it was quite some departure, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, there was a flicker of emotion. There was a lot of sadness here. The plane was parked just in that space there at 7 o'clock this morning. Right through the night, people had been coming to the windows here, pressing their faces up against those windows and just gazing at this beautiful, great feat of engineering. Then just after 7 o'clock this morning, people were coming underneath. Stewardesses with those turned-up boater hats were standing underneath it and being photographed. Then we had the final event. The plane was pushed back by the truck. It moved back out into the runway. The captain put out the Union flag and the Stars and Stripes out of the cockpit window. It stood there gracefully, elegantly. 2 fire trucks put an arch of red, white and blue water for the plane to go through, and it went through with the utmost grace towards the runway. It paused on the end of the runway, as one imagines it should do with its grandeur. Then it built up speed, 250 miles an hour, and simply soared into this absolutely pristine blue sky. Towards Manhattan, it banked away and then out over to the great blue yonder of the Atlantic, and this absolutely fabulous sky, this morning sky in Manhattan.
And Steve, do we know who's on board?
We know some of the celebrities. Sir David Frost, who seems to be one of their best customers, Jeremy Clarkson, an absolute clutch of supermodels. We know what they ate. They had lobster fish cakes. They had a selection of champagnes, not just one champagne. And I suppose perhaps the biggest celebrity of all, Joan Collins, was there. So it was a pretty good clutch of celebrities. I suppose it wasn't like the great days when Paul McCartney was known to actually lead the people in the cabin in singing Beatles songs, or Rupert Murdoch or whatever, but not bad going, you know.
Okay, Steve Evans, thank you very much there in New York as Concorde left this morning with the fire trucks seeing her off, and it really was a spectacular sight. Well, here at Heathrow Airport, crowds have been gathering throughout the day to get their own view of Concorde as it comes into land. And they've even built special grandstands here at Heathrow Airport so that people can get a good view of the planes as they come in. Catherine Marsden is with some of those people. Catherine.
Yes, so you can see behind me just some of the 1,000 people that have been lucky enough to get tickets to be on this grandstand. And to give you an idea of the view that they're looking out of, we're just going to swing the camera around. From the level that we're at, you can't really see very much, but that is the perimeter fence. You can see lots of people lined up along the road as well. That's the perimeter fence of Heathrow, and the runway is just the other side. So Concorde is going to land right in front of all of us. And of course, if you're up there in the grandstand, you're going to have a much, much better view. Everybody here is a Concorde enthusiast. We've got two of them with us here this afternoon, Melanie Rolfe and Jordan Williams. Thank you both for joining us. Melanie, you've got your own Concorde story to tell. Let's hear it.
I flew on Concorde in 1994. Complete surprise from my husband. I just thought I was going to go and touch it at an air show in Fairfield, and then he handed me a ticket, said, "You're going on it," and he just says, the expression on my face, he'll never forget it. So, and it was great fun.
You're really only one of a very small number of people around the world lucky enough to have been on Concorde. What's it like being on board?
You just get shivers. I'm telling you, because I'm doing it now. Just exceptional feelings, you know. There's nothing else like this aeroplane, nothing else.
And Jordan, you live right under the flight path of Concorde, don't you? So you're very used to seeing it.
Yeah, it's quite loud in the mornings, but it's a brilliant sight.
So how do you both feel today? We're obviously here for the most important event of all. How do you feel? How do you think you'll feel when Concorde finally comes to land?
Very sad.
Why do you think you'll feel so sad?
Because it's part of Britain's heritage and we can't delete it.
What about you, Melanie?
Well, I've told my boss I'm coming to the funeral of a dear friend today. He understands what I'm really meaning, but, you know, this is something we should be proud of, and it's a shame.
Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you both very much for talking to us. The excitement's been building here this afternoon. Of course, they've got less than 15 minutes now to wait.
Catherine, thanks very much indeed. It's been a very odd kind of day today because there has been the most tremendous excitement among everyone that you speak to, but it's also tinged with extreme sadness, and I suspect that nowhere will that sadness be more acute than, well, in the hall behind me here, the engineering base where the Concorde has been loved and nurtured and cared for and kept in the air. Let's cross now to Philippa Thomas. Philippa.
Thanks very much, and you're right, John. It's really awash with nostalgia down here. Everybody thinking that Concorde was dreamt up in the era of Harold Wilson and the Beatles. We talked about the white heat of technology, putting man on the moon, and flying at the very edge of space in this beautiful machine. Let's think about the future now. I'm joined by our transport correspondent. And Simon, is this it? Is it all really over now?
It's all over for Concorde as far as carrying passengers is concerned. I really don't think there's any chance now of any further passengers ever getting on Concorde again. The big question, though, is this really the end for Concorde flying at all? After this afternoon, they've got 7 Concordes that British Airways have got to get rid of. It's thought that they're all going to go to museums. But there is still an open question, and British Airways will only answer this next week, as to whether one, in fact, might well be kept for special occasions, Queen's birthdays and other such celebrations, and that perhaps we might still see a Concorde, albeit without passengers, but potentially still flying.
Well, Simon, stay with us, and of course we'll be here when everyone comes off onto the red carpet after that last flight in from New York.
Philippa, thank you. So what exactly is it like to travel at Mach 2? We set Dermot Murnaghan the arduous task, and believe me, it was really tough to find volunteers, of finding out what makes flying on Concorde such a unique experience. He found it started long before you board the plane.
I'd like to check in for New York, please. That might just be enough. So I've got my champagne and nibbles, but of course it wouldn't be a Concorde flight without a celeb or two. What is it that's so great about Concorde for you?
Well, the greatest thing for me is to be able to get from New York to London in a little over 3 hours. As long as you're not more than 6'1", I think it's a great plane to be.
There is that about this
Yes.
space, isn't it? Well, enough rubbing shoulders with the stars. Time now to get on board.
This is the EasyJet flight to Barcelona, is it?
Smiles all round for the passengers, and even hardened Concorde veterans still fall under its spell.
Yeah.
The ability to fly on the edge of space where the sky gets darker, where you can see the curvature of the Earth, travel faster than a rifle bullet, 23 miles a minute. This time of the year, take off from London in the dark and travel west so fast that you see the sun rising in the west.
Now, the thing is, as they often tell you about Concorde, it actually is very cramped on board. Take away the leather seats, the fine wines and the great food, and you could be on a charter flight, I suppose. So forget the frills and the glamour. The real reason why people are here is to say, I was there when we hit twice the speed of sound. Here we go, Mach 2, 1,300 miles an hour, 50,000 feet above the earth, and you don't feel a thing. To be honest, it was bumpier as we taxied out along the runway.
It's just the thrill, isn't it? You know, the speed it goes, it's absolutely terrific. And so smooth.
We leave at 6:30 and we're home at 5:30. It's fantastic. I'm at the house at 6:30 already.
Souvenir hunters are stripping these final flights of just about everything that isn't nailed down. And items in the Concorde catalogue are selling like hotcakes. But that's not all. The brochure has turned up on an internet auction site, and they're asking £65 for that. How weird is that? What are they taking with them?
Anything from the safety cards, anything that says Concorde, your drip mats, your little swizzle stick for your drink that says Concorde on it. I believe one of these signs was taken, but how they got it, I do not know.
And here we are, New York, all too soon.
3.5 hours of life in the jet set, that's it. I'll never fly Concorde again. Well, no one will ever fly Concorde again. It's back to Earth with a bump.
And having become a member of the Supersonic Club, I left with a lump in my throat and wondering when us mere mortals will again have the chance to fly at twice the speed of sound.
It's hard to believe it's not going to fly again, isn't it? See ya.
Dermot Manahan there with the Concorde experience. Well, I think this is going to be my only souvenir of the Concorde trip. Media only, my media pass for getting into Heathrow Airport today. Let's find out how the Concordes are doing on their path into Heathrow Airport. We can go back to Fergus. And Fergus, that extraordinary sort of access you're getting to the flight decks.
Yes, indeed, John. In about 3 minutes' time, a chap called Ivor Sims, an air traffic controller, is going to clear the first of those 3 Concordes to land. And spookily enough, curiously, he was the air traffic controller who back in 1976 cleared the first commercial Concorde flight for takeoff. Now, on the map behind me, I can tell you that a 002, the Concorde coming from JFK, is around about Ockham in the Surrey area here, and it should have hooked up by now with a flight from the Bay of Biscay, and then very shortly they'll be going round to start their descent across the Thames. But we can do better than that. We can talk to Concorde. We can talk to that JFK Concorde, because Adrian Dolan here is an air traffic controller, and he's been chatting already to Robert Woodcock, the chief engineer on board. Adrian.
Speedbird Concorde 2, Heathrow radar.
Heathrow radar, Speedbird Concorde 002, go.
Speedbird Concorde 2, once again report your position and level, please.
At the moment we're 23 miles from Ockham in Surrey, descending to a flight level of 80. Our speed at the moment is Mach 52, and we've got a ground speed of 450 miles an hour. We're estimating Ockham at 49.
Speedbird Concorde 2, Roger, and can you provide for us your routing after Ockham, please, towards landing at Heathrow 27 right?
Heathrow radio, Speedbird Concorde 002, we've just received a change of routing, and on approaching Ockham we're going to be vectored to the north now, over Heathrow itself, and I guess from Heathrow we'll be going over Hillingdon area, then we're going to turn due east and go over Southall, and east onwards over the northwestern and northeastern boroughs of London. We should be getting down to an altitude of about 2,500 feet then. When we turn base leg, it will be around the Thames Barrier region, and then we'll join the localizer for runway 27 right and head inbound towards that runway at London. Passing over Canary Wharf, we'll have the Dome on our left, so people around Greenwich will be able to see us, and I suppose there's a fair amount of people at the Greenwich Laboratory and Cuddy Sark area. They will be able to see us quite clearly. And then over the City of London, we'll have the London Eye on the left-hand side. We're passing almost overhead Buckingham Palace and the Mall, and then onwards to Heathrow from there.
Speedbird Concorde 2, Roger, while we have this opportunity, can I wish you on behalf of all air traffic control all the best for your approach. It's been a pleasure to serve you over the last 30 years. When we come into work tomorrow, our jobs will have changed forever.
I should imagine imagine they would, and that's very kind of you to say that, and may we, on behalf of all the crew here, may I, thank you all for the magnificent service you've given us over the 27 years of Concorde operations into Heathrow. It's much appreciated, and we always like coming back to London here in the professional English voice.
It's good to see you, Roger.
As an amendment to that, I can just give you the final times for the Concorde arrivals at Heathrow, and the first Concorde will land at 0503, that's 1503. Second Concorde's going to land at 1505 and a half, and us, finally, the Concorde 002 will land at 1508.
Roger.
Adrian, thanks very much indeed. So there you have it, the Concordes. The first one is the Edinburgh one's going to land at 3 minutes past the hour, then the one that did the Bay of Biscay loop at about 5 minutes past, and then that final flight from New York at 8 minutes past. And there's a great deal of sadness here today. I remember the one flight very well that I took on Concorde, and it will never again roar over my house. And it is really something, John, that you tell your grandchildren about, and I will always treasure that memory.
Okay, Fergus, thank you very much indeed, and absolutely fantastic to get that access to the flight decks and hear how the crews are doing on their way in. In fact, we can just show you, I think, the pictures over London now. We've got a helicopter up at about 2,500 feet, and that helicopter is waiting to get the first glimpses of Concorde coming in over London, as they were discussing from the flight deck there, the path they'll take over the Millennium Dome down towards the London Eye, and then in towards Heathrow Airport. And I think they've been given permission to come in slightly lower today than normal, because so that as many Londoners as possible get a chance to see the plane coming in. Let's just see if what we can... So let's go back to those helicopter shots and see if we can catch a glimpse yet of, I suspect, what will become a dot on the skyline, because obviously air traffic control, whilst happy to let us film these pictures, don't want us to be going too close to the path of the incoming plane there. But as I was saying, our helicopter, I think, is roughly at an altitude of 2,500 feet, and I think that's the altitude we expect the Concorde to make its final approach, which I think is slightly lower than it normally would do. But as this is such a special day, I think it was agreed that the plane could come in slightly lower on its final approach into London. And you can see it's there we are. And there you can see it, just in the centre of your screen. Concorde coming in over London. I think we're at sort of, this is the east end of London that the helicopter is, sort of on the Essex-Kent border, coming in now back towards the centre of the Thames, following the path of the River Thames. And it's a fantastic when you fly in over the centre of London, and you can see, you can pick out all the landmarks so clearly. First, I think we've lost Concorde behind some cloud cover. I think we'll stay with these pictures for a little longer just to see if she re-emerges from the clouds. But we have been blessed with a fine day, and that was the first. And we'll be coming back to those live shots, and there you can see London spread out before you. Now, in a few moments' time, I'll be introducing a couple of our studio guests this afternoon. First, let me take you back to March 1969 and Concorde's first ever test flight.
Rotate any second. Nose wheel well up. Smooth rotation continuing. Nose come up to 20 degrees. She's airborne in 26 seconds. She flies. Concorde flies at last. Climbing into a sunlit sky, pursued by...
Now, I don't know whether you recognise the voice of the person doing the commentary there, but it was of Raymond Baxter, of course, the voice of Tomorrow's World. And I'm delighted to say that he is one of our studio guests today, along with John Hutchinson, a former Concorde pilot. Raymond Baxter, first of all, coming to you. Was it a fantastic moment when you heard the thunderous roar of those engines and you saw it take off?
Oh yes, unforgettable experience. I've been a passionate advocate for Concorde ever since the project was first launched, and here was the realization of a dream. Any maiden flight is exciting, but the maiden flight in France and then at Filton, one was acutely aware of the historic significance of what we were watching in the conclusion of the long period of development flying before the first passenger was carried. Here was the dawn of a new era, and today, sadly, we are marking the end of that era. And I had to say there's more fuss today than there was on the first day of flight.
And John Hutchinson, if we look at it, you can see there Concorde making its progress towards London. So roughly what altitude would you say they're at there?
Well, it's difficult to say from those pictures, but I suspect you're right. I think they probably are getting clearance to fly in at a rather lower altitude than normal, so probably somewhere around 1,500 feet, I would guess at. And all I know is that that chap's going to be concentrating very hard on making a most immaculate approach and a most immaculate touchdown. We'll get our score charts out.
Yeah, how easy will it be for him to put out of his mind the emotion of the moment, the historical significance of the moment, and just be concentrating on, right, am I doing everything that I would always do in the run-up to a landing?
I can only compare it with my last flight on Concorde when I retired, and I just felt I did not want to walk away from that aeroplane. That lovely airplane that meant so much to me over 15 years, having done a sort of bit of a shot-down type of arrival. Unfortunately, I did a very smooth landing, and I'm sure that's the way all these three chaps will want to end their Concorde careers.
How difficult as a plane is it to land?
It's a very easy airplane to land. It's settled, that great delta wing compresses the air between the runway surface and the wing, and it sort of settles into that ground cushion effect. The trick is to actually land very smoothly.
Raymond Baxter, we talk about you, and you know, me growing up, I remember you, of course, as the Tomorrow's World presenter. What do you feel? It seems like we're going back to yesterday's world today, yes, by saying that the supersonic age has ended.
Well, yes, I share your emotions exactly. I think what we are seeing today is a national week. It's a cross between a celebration and mourning. And I am mourning in the sense of grief, you know what I mean. My hope, my profound hope, is that Concorde will be seen flying again. And quite frankly, I am not certain why she's being taken out of service. The aeroplane has operated impeccably all those years and is today, as we can see, operating impeccably, forecasting the arrival at the end of the runway to the nearest second. And I remember so clearly when it started, and there was a certain amount of suspense, even though André Turcard, the French test pilot, and Brian Trubshaw had done it on the simulator, they could never be sure how it would actually handle.
And we're just getting these wonderful pictures there from the helicopter, and I think another Concorde was coming the other way, so I don't know whether they're on some kind of pattern of coming in sort of some kind of formation. But there's the very wide shot that we're showing you of the Concorde. Now we can go in tighter as the plane comes in, and these are photos of these pictures are coming to you live from our helicopter that we've put up over London to get these marvellous images of Concorde against a sort of autumn cloud cover. That has, luckily, it's been cold on the ground today and a little windy, but it has been a very fine day with very good visibility, and that's why we're able to bring you these fabulous images. John Hutchinson, let me bring you in as well there, because I saw you were nodding vigorously to when Raymond Baxter was saying, this is a premature end.
I absolutely was nodding vigorously. I agree with that completely. The airplane should not, in my view, be ending its career today. It's got at least 8 or 10 years life left in it, and it just saddens me. I hope maybe a consortium, or Sir Richard Branson, or a consortium involving Sir Richard Branson, maybe we'll get together and enable one to fly on as a heritage airplane. That would be magnificent.
Now, the fact that the landing gear is already down, does that suggest that it is very close to landing?
That'll mean he's about 5 miles or so out from the runway threshold, roughly speaking.
Right. And so then a matter of minutes to go before it's due to touchdown?
Yep.
let me just stay with you on the whole question of whether it is viable or non-viable. Isn't the problem that it was technologically spectacular, aesthetically wonderful, but commercially a disaster?
Well, people say it was commercially a disaster. I don't think it was. I think British Airways did extremely well with Concorde, bearing in mind that they acquired it from the British taxpayer at a knockdown price, whatever that may be. People have quoted a mythical £1 figure, but, you know, on that sort of basis, I believe that British Airways could hardly fail to make money with the airplane. In the years that I was on it, the break-even load factor was around 40%, and we used to get average load factors on the airplane of around 60%.
Okay, let's just keep you with these pictures here. And Raymond Baxter, did you actually get to fly? I mean, I know you were in Toulouse for the test flight. Did you fly Concorde?
Yes, I did. Thanks to my great friend Brian Trubshaw, the late Brian Trubshaw, and John Cochrane, who was co-pilot. I went on quite a few of the proving flights before passengers came aboard, and we did one of the early proving flights with passengers to Morocco, and everyone who was anyone in aviation was on that flight.
But explain to me this, why did no other airline buy Concorde? Why? We've seen the British, oh, look at that shot now, we've got Concordes there sort of stacking up.
Oh my goodness, look at that. Oh, gracious. That's the kind of thing we never even saw at Farnborough. Yeah. I flew in Concorde over Farnborough, her one and only appearance there, with John Cochrane, and I'll never forget that. But to see two Concordes over Heathrow, I never, ever imagined I would see that. Did you, John?
No. It's a spectacular sight, isn't it? Stream landing, almost.
Yes, and so wonderful for the thousands of people who've gone to enormous lengths to see this. I know of a very distinguished elderly lady.
I don't know whether we can come to the studio camera here, but you can see it now coming into land behind us. Right behind where we're speaking to you from now. And there we are, Concorde is coming in behind us, the first of the Concordes to land. And you can hear the roar. And you can actually, as I look around, you know, I can see a number of people, and everyone is standing absolutely still. Everyone is just looking to the sky to watch this Concorde come down on the northerly runway. John, what sort of speed is it doing now as it's coming into land?
You'll be doing roughly about 157 knots, something like that. And, oh, well, I think we'll say a little gust of wind caught it.
Was there a little bounce there, or was that my imagination?
No, it was a gust of wind.
You're being loyal. You're being loyal to your fellow fraternity of Concorde pilots.
Yeah. You won't be pleased.
You won't be pleased.
Remember, this aeroplane lands and takes off a great deal faster than your average jumbo.
And the reverse thrust that you must need to get to break it, is that, do you feel that jolting?
There are two things about the deceleration of Concorde on landing. The reverse thrust is extraordinarily effective, and the carbon fibre wheel brakes, which have pioneered the wheel brakes for all of a sudden modern Airbuses and so on, and all modern airplanes, are incredibly efficient in terms of absorbing energy. You can stop a Concorde. I've stopped one at Cardiff in about 4,000 feet of runway.
Yeah, and I mean, I can just see the next one coming in behind us now, which I suspect will be touching down in a couple of minutes' time. But you talk about that. We talk about the technological advances made by Concorde for Concorde, but presumably the technological advances had other spin-offs in other areas of life, and we've got another magnificent shot of one Concorde coming into land and another Concorde sort of stacking up behind it. There must have been other the technological advances, just like the moon landing, I don't know, gave us Teflon, for example. There must have been things associated with Concorde.
Oh, absolutely many. And not least the worldwide prestige which it won for British aviation, British engineering. And there's no doubt that the spin-off effect of Concorde almost immeasurable. For instance, Airbus would not have been formed had it not been for the cooperation between England and France in the construction of this aeroplane. Another thing we haven't mentioned, which is unique, is the thrust of power when Concorde accelerates from the cruising speed of a normal jumbo to supersonic speed, and you literally go back in your seat like that.
There she comes.
But this, of course, is absolutely the reverse process.
Lovely. It's such a gorgeous sight when she comes into land. She always reminds me of sort of a swan touching down on a lake or something. It's such an elegant, long-necked, beautiful creature.
We haven't mentioned the drooped snoot, the famous drop nose, which makes it possible to take off and land this aeroplane, which has an attitude so different from any other airliner.
And the droop snoot, incidentally, is just so that the pilots can actually get a decent view of the runway. With the nose up, the poor old pilot coming into land would have his view of the runway totally obscured.
So it has to do it. In fact, I mean, I tell you what, I want to pause slightly now, because what we're seeing now is flight 002, and this is going to be the final Concorde that people are going to see coming into land at Heathrow Airport. This is it. This is the end of the era. This is the final one that we're going to see in the skies, and I suspect it's got probably a minute and a half left before it comes onto the runway and then taxis round. I think it will almost do a lap of honour round the airport to come onto the stand. John, just tell me what you're thinking now.
I was actually thinking about the staff at Kennedy Airport, the British Airways staff, who will miss it madly. They were fantastic to us. In fact, the whole of the Port of New York Authority and the air traffic controllers at Kennedy Airport were treated Concorde with tremendous help and assistance and cooperation.
Tell me this, being a pilot on Concorde, were you treated as somehow something different? A cut above the rest almost. I mean, or that maybe other pilots got a little chippiness, because to fly that beautiful thing.
It wasn't us that were a cut above the rest, it was that aeroplane that was a cut above the rest. We were all we were the privileged pilots and flight engineers who were allowed to operate that aeroplane for all those years.
And did you feel that? Look, here it comes now.
I certainly did feel that.
And down she comes.
Settling down. Lovely.
Puff of smoke from the
Perfect.
wheels.
And then once that nose wheel touches down, that's when we bring into the reverse thrust and the carbon fibre brakes swing into action. Lovely sight. You can hear the reverse thrust coming through the studio. All
So what is it? Sadness? A feeling of pride? Sadness? What is the mixture of emotions, John Hutchinson?
Sadness for me, predominantly. But pride that the aeroplane has achieved so much in its commercial life, and it's demonstrated that supersonic flight is doable and that there are huge benefits to supersonic flight, and I'm sure there will be a successor to Concorde at some stage.
I had the misfortune of being the BBC's Paris correspondent when Concorde crashed and I went out to Gonesse that evening. And there was a feeling then that would Concorde ever fly again? Did you think it was right to make all the investment in the aircraft to bring it back for what has been a relatively short period of time?
I'll tell you what I do think, very strongly indeed. I don't believe that British Airways should ever have grounded their Concordes.
And you can see, I think we can see the Union flag poking out of the window there.
Yes.
As possibly the most famous nose in the world. And just look at the people behind, the ground crew. They've probably all got other things they're meant to be getting on with. But the whole airport, I suspect, at Heathrow has come to a halt for these three Concordes.
Just to go back very briefly to what you were saying, if you cast your mind back, you'll remember that after that dreadful event at Paris, British Airways carried on operating their Concordes for about 3 weeks with a whole lot of very tight checks and procedures agreed with the Civil Aviation Authority. And it was eventually, I'm afraid, pressure mainly from France that it ended up with the grounding of the airplane, which I believe was completely unjustified and slurred the reputation of a magnificent airplane.
Now, how much do you think that you've touched on something, and this is a day of kind of, you know, let's talk about the reality of today as well. There has been something of a battle, hasn't there, between the French and the British over whether to keep Concorde going?
Yes, I think that's fair to say that, and I think part of it stems from the fact that there's much more in the way of business links between London and New York than there are between Paris and New York. So British Airways had a sort of commercial advantage over the French in that sense. Also, because London was crucially that much closer to New York, it wasn't such a tight operation from an operational point of view for British Airways as it was for Air France. So Air France did have problems that British Airways did not have. So basically British Airways were able to operate profitably in a way that Air France perhaps couldn't.
Okay. Look, let's go outside the studio, because there have been huge crowds that have been gathering to watch Concorde's return, and Catherine Marsden is with those crowds of people who've been in the grandstand, probably shivering cold, but hugely excited and maybe sad by what they've seen. Catherine.
Yes, it's been a long wait, and it is bitterly cold today, but I think everybody here thought it was well worth it. Extraordinary scenes amongst the crowds here as the three Concordes landed. We, of course, got an absolutely fantastic ringside view. Everybody was up on their feet, cheering and clapping, thoroughly enjoying the moment.